Welcome to another edition of RCE. Again, this is Brock Palin. You can find old episodes and subscribe in your favorite podcatcher at rce-cast.com. You can also find links to all of our Twitters and blogs and stuff on there. Also, on my blog specifically, my group at the University of Michigan is looking for a Linux person. So you can find our job posting off of my blog there. Otherwise, you can use the contact information on the RCE website to get a hold of me if you may have someone who might be interested or you want to introduce to us, or if you're interested yourself. Also, Jeff, I think you've got some stuff coming up.
Yeah, we do. Speaking of hiring, my group is hiring as well. I'm in the server group at Cisco, and we need some Linux kernel hackers for some network work. So either ping me or go look at my blog. I put a couple of details out there, and let me know. We're always looking for good Linux kernel hackers. Additionally, Euro MPI is coming up. The deadline for that, I think, is in, well, it depends on when this podcast goes live. But the deadline, I think, is May 17th for papers. So get your papers in. We're going to Vienna this year. It'll be a good time.
Vienna, nice. So let's get into what we're talking about today. So today we're going to be talking about a group and an effort more so than there's actually no software involved with this. So we're going to be talking with two different people about Data Without Borders, and we'll let them explain it. But I have Nikki Rhoda, who's another graduate student here at the University of Michigan, as well as Jake Porway, who's one of the founders of the Data Without Borders movement. So guys, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Nikki, and I'm a master's student at the School of Information here at the University of Michigan, studying human-computer interaction and information analysis and retrieval.
And I'm Jake Porway. I'm the founder and executive director of Data Without Borders, and was previously the data scientist in the New York Times Research and Development Group.
So what is this Data Without Borders project, and what are your goals?
So Data Without Borders is a nonprofit that connects expert data scientists with high-impact social organizations so that they can better collect, analyze, or visualize data in the service of humanity. Our goals are to connect data scientists who have extra capacity and want social outputs for that with social organizations who are doing good things on the ground and may have a lot of data or be influenced by data but don't have the capacity to look at it themselves.
Now, when you say capacity, what do you mean by that? Do you mean equipment? Do you mean expertise? All of the above?
That's a great question. It's really all of the above, and a lot of times even just the mindset of thinking about data. I think our long-term goals are actually to have a world where every social organization has enough data capacity in terms of thinking about data and planning out their projects as someone like Google or Amazon. We'd love it if it were as crazy for a mission-driven organization to plan a new project and not think about how they were going to use data as much as it would be for them to plan a new project and not think about a budget. So we're here thinking really about the mindset of realizing that data is important, and then in addition to that, the capacity that comes from needing people, like resources, people who know what to do with that data, as well as a lot of the technology infrastructure. And we know that people in Silicon Valley and Wall Street have a lot of these things, but the nonprofit and the social sector tends not to have the resources for that all the time.
So is this like a commercial venture that's going to be funding itself, or is this a nonprofit effort? How do you have this structured?
That's a really interesting question. It is a nonprofit structure, but we don't think that being a nonprofit means that you have to forever rely on grants and donations. So we have plans to make this financially sustainable. And we're working through a number of avenues on that, both from charging for services to licensing tools that we'll be creating, as well as providing educational resources so that even groups that we can't work with directly could still learn from our webinars or from books that we put out on how they can think about data differently. So we are a nonprofit, but we want to be sustainable as well.
So let's talk about you specifically a little bit here. How did you originally get the motivation to do this, and what was kind of your starting efforts to create Data Without Borders?
Well, as I mentioned, I was working at the time as a data scientist, and I couldn't help but feel that we were at this really exciting time where there's so much data and so many tools to use data that you realize that very soon a lot of the world's decisions are going to be driven by data. And I was excited not just by that potential, but all the excitement in the community around this. I'm sure a lot of your listeners and you guys have heard of hackathons, these sort of weekend events where people come and work on problems in their spare time. And I was so inspired by those. I went to my first hackathon. I was really kind of pumped up because I felt, wow, this is an amazing time where all these people are sitting in this room with the most amazing skills the world has ever seen. They're all great coders. They've got great machine learning skills, and they're spending their spare time. This isn't work time. This is their weekends and their nights coming together to build something. This is really amazing. This is incredible. And I couldn't wait to see what we were going to come up with. And by the end of the day, the results that we came up with were like a little bit unfulfilling. There were a lot of mobile apps to help you find a restaurant. There were some programs people had come up with that were kind of like Twitter clones. I just thought, man, it's kind of tragic that we've got all this excitement in the community, and yet what we're coming up with are these sort of iPhone apps. And so I just put out an open call to my friends in the city and the data science community to say, hey, does anybody else feel this way? Does anyone else want to do something more socially conscious, find ways we can use our skills for good? And so it actually started as just a blog post amongst my friends saying, hey, sign up on the email list. If people are interested, maybe we'll find some good data, maybe city data, maybe social data, and from that we'll see if we can do something that's a little more socially positive. And I learned the lesson that day that you should never put anything online unless you want everyone to read it, because somebody tweeted it and it sort of went viral. And before I knew it, the UN and the White House were calling and saying, hey, how do we sign up for this? And that was when I realized, this has the potential to be something much bigger. Clearly people are interested, so we've been taking it forward ever since.
So let me take a step back and ask you kind of a dumb question. What is a data scientist? What does that mean? What do you do?
It's a fantastic question, and one that is hotly contested within the nerd community. It's become this new in vogue term that kind of encompasses statisticians, data miners, data analysts of yore, and tries to bring them under this umbrella now that there is so much data. So it really refers to people who are dealing with large amounts of data and trying to find insights from it, and whether that's the guy who's programming the infrastructure to hold terabytes of data to the statistician on the other end who's actually mining that data to find patterns. And so while the definition is still up for debate, people tend to see it as kind of a mix of computer science, so being able to write code to get data and manipulate data, and statistics, so being able to understand the possible sources of bias and how you should deal with data and how to actually do some machine learning around it, as well as sort of a critical mind, where I think is where the scientist term comes in, someone who can ask the right questions and drill down to that. So it's very much in flux, but basically kind of a coding, stats, numbers-minded scientist looking for patterns in data is the way I see it.
So, Nikki, how did you get involved with this?
Great question. When Jake sent out that blog post, I heard about it through some of the channels that I subscribe to. And believe it or not, I was actually in Michigan at the time when I heard about it. I was visiting the school for the first time and getting to know Ann Arbor, and immediately thought that this was something that I thought the School of Information should get involved in. Somehow, some way or another, there were people at my school who would want to join. So I met with some of our administrators here and some of the students who were on campus, and there seemed to be a groundswell of people who thought that this idea was awesome. And I said, great, I'm based in New York City. I'm going to contact Jake. I'm going to tell him that this is awesome and he should come to Ann Arbor. And that is exactly what I did. So the rest is history in a sense. We met up. I told him, and this was just when it was starting. This was, Jake, we must have met in like July or August of this past summer.
Yeah, I don't think we'd even held a single event yet, or
yes.
We were just still building up the knowledge. So yeah, Nikki was awesome and showed up and said, hey, this is great. I've got a ton of ideas. And we met up and it instantly clicked.
And I basically said, I'm at a school where this is what I'm intending to think about. I actually came to the School of Information hoping to look at how nonprofits deal with information. That was specifically why I was coming to the School of Information. My background was working with various nonprofits in India in particular. And I saw what challenges they faced, not only meeting the reporting requirements that their donors had set, but also in terms of managing